Welcome back to my Hardest Bosses series, and thanks for your patience with this video. Life has become a bit more busy, and I'm really driven to hit some goals of my own in speedrunning, particularly in Final Fantasy VIII, which I'll be doing over on Twitch. I think I'll set a more reasonable goal for this series as one entry each month, rather than every week or so. With that said, let's look at the speedrun of Final Fantasy II. Final Fantasy II is an interesting game. It wasn't initially released outside of Japan, and is commonly seen as a very weak entry in the series. Personally, I found the Pixel Remaster to be an excellent casual experience, and I even tried my hand at speedrunning it, but I know that it has a lot of quality of life changes over previous iterations. In my opinion, it was simply too ambitious. The game contains a keyword system where players can take note of important words or phrases and ask various other characters about them, sometimes to use as a password or to ask a character about something occurring in the story. Furthermore, the progression system is weird. While there wasn't exactly a JRPG standard yet, experience is very literal. The more a character attacks with swords, their sword level goes up. The more they defend with shields, their shield level goes up, and so on. And magic is similar. Rather than walking into a shop and buying a more advanced spell or learning it from a skill tree, spells are learned through tomes, either found in chests or purchased at a shop, and gain experience each time they're cast. It's a neat system, almost as if the character is learning to use these weapons and spells better, but it lacks the feedback and tangibility of a normal level up system, and is a bit unintuitive. Starting with the NES version, speedrunners will take advantage of the tomes mechanic in a few different ways. When I said the game was too ambitious, I really meant it, to the degree that a lot of the mechanics don't really work as intended or cause a lot of bugs. In addition to teaching a spell, tomes can be used as a consumable item in battle for a single cast of that ability at a high level, and can also be equipped. Various glitches are used in the speedrun, and two of the main ones are related to the lightning tome and the fire tome. Runners will have a tome in their inventory and switch it to a character's hand in battle. A lightning tome used in this way will allow the party to flee from battles instantly, and the fire tome, when equipped specifically onto the fourth character's hand, will cause their punches to deal massive damage, enough to kill just about any target in the 80% run in a single hit. While this makes single target fights a breeze, fights with multiple enemies remain extremely volatile. Typically, runners will use a combination of the wall spell followed by the warp spell, two group targeting spells that when used together result in an instant kill, assuming warp doesn't miss. No fight demonstrates how dangerous multi-target fights are more than the first encounter with the Emperor. This is a boss broken up into 3 phases. The first 2 fights in the sequence have a chance to ambush the party and contain between 2 and 4 royal guards. The third fight contains the Emperor, 2 royal guards, and a wood golem. Royal guards have nasty physical attacks that not only deal high damage but also have a chance to poison their target. While the poison itself isn't too scary, the damage of the attack is. Given that players are unable to access the menu between battles, I'm counting this as a single fight, as speedrunners can't take safety saves, heal up, or change their equipment before the next phase starts. Unless a runner wants to take the time to level up warp to increase its odds of success, they just have to hope they can make it through with Furion and Maria taking out 1 or 2 of the enemies, while Ricard uses the fire tome to punch his way through the sequence of fights. I truthfully find this version absolutely fascinating. I've really only scratched the surface on what makes it so broken, and I'll probably make an entire video dedicated to it, but that's a later project. The Game Boy Advance and PSP versions of Final Fantasy II are very similar. The strategies used are just about identical across both versions, so I'll be combining their portions here. The hardest fight is once again the Emperor 1 boss rush. While the strategies are somewhat similar, runners don't have the equipped tome bugs on their side. They'll use teleport tomes to deal with multiple target fights, and don't require wall to be cast for this to work. The Royal Guards, similarly to the NES version, can be threatening targets and get the party pretty weak headed into the third fight. The last fight has a few key problems. Firstly, the wood golem in the third fight can't be teleported away. This can result in some wasted teleport tomes with an unfortunate turn order, and requires the use of fire tomes and attacks to take him out instead. It isn't a massive deal, as it's extremely easy to gather guild to buy a ton of teleport tomes early on, but it loses about 5 seconds each time a tome is wasted. Additionally, if the Emperor manages to get a turn in before the party, he can cast high damage thunder spells that target all 4 party members and can deal a massive amount of damage to them. There's still the possibility of being ambushed by the initial 2 guard fights and simply getting unlucky in the third fight. Even high level runners will always save their progress as a backup for this fight. The PlayStation version is probably the most strange. In battle, each party member is only able to hold 2 items such as potions, so runners are unable to rely on teleport tomes and other similar strategies. Instead, they'll sacrifice all of their party members except Firion and have him spend the entire game raising his sword level for damage and accuracy. During battles, runners will switch between a primary sword such as the Ice Brand for damage and the Blood Sword to heal. The hardest fight here, unsurprisingly, is still the Emperor 1 boss rush. However, the only real strategy here is to ensure that you switch to the Blood Sword when Firion's health gets low. The hardest fight in the Pixel Remaster is not actually the Emperor 1 boss rush, but instead the Lamia Queen fight. Emperor 1 is still a tough series of fights, but it's significantly quicker to reload a save if the fight goes poorly. Lamia Queen, however, is stuck behind a long, slow cutscene, and the fight has a few major issues. Modern strategies for this fight are to have Firion attempt to connect and attack with the Curse Sword. It may not deal very much damage, if any, and it only has a 23% chance to connect, but if it does, it will cut the target's attack, defense, and magic in half, making them significantly weaker. Maria and Guy will attack with fists, and Layla will start with a Sleep Grasp before switching to spamming Thunder spells. Alternatively, if runners commit the time to picking up the Sleep Sword earlier in the run, they can use this to attempt to sleep the Lamia Queen as well. However, the Sleep Sword is obtained from a monster chest that in itself is a troubling fight, and using Sleep Grass is simply faster. Sleepgrass casts a max level sleep spell, and if it does land and sleep the Lamia Queen, it's still unfortunately not a straightforward fight. Unlike later entries where a sleeping target will remain asleep just about indefinitely until they're hit with a physical attack, sleeping enemies in Final Fantasy II may wake up the next turn or stay asleep indefinitely. The duration is random. Even hitting a target with a physical attack doesn't wake them up. Lamia Queen also has a chance to cast a high level Blink, raising her evasion massively, so much so that the fight becomes just about impossible. Curse Sword, Sleep Sword, and Blood Sword all do well to swing the odds of this speedrun in favour of the player, but the Lamia Queen fight can put runners in a very difficult position if the fight goes even remotely poorly, and a lot of what's required for the fight to go well relies on things that have a relatively low success rate. The Final Fantasy II speedrun has no shortage of tough fights, and despite the versions themselves not being wildly different, the subtle differences result in significantly different strategies to take down tough fights. As always, regardless of whether or not you yourself are a speedrunner, I'd love to hear what boss gave you the most trouble in the comments if you've played this less loved entry in the Final Fantasy series. This will be for an honourable mentions segment at the end of the series. Thank you to these runners for taking the time out of their day to share their valuable insight and help with researching this video. Their social media and stream links will be in the video description, along with my own. Thank you for watching.